Okay, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the session on the Royal Commission on Environment Regulations. I hope my voice is clear and you're able to see the screen. Please confirm on the chat box. Okay, so the session has been scheduled for 2 hours. We start now and hopefully will not reach 2 hours because I know it's a weekday. It's post-lunch session and everyone will be eager to get back home as soon as possible. So we'll make it as short as possible. The presentation itself will be about maybe 40 to 45 minutes, inshallah. And after that, really like to keep the session open for a prolonged discussion. I think the presentation is ambitious. We are looking at the Royal Commission on Environmental Regulation. And mashallah, it's a very good regulation, and it is divided into 3 parts. You all must be knowing it. So we'll try to cover all the three volumes, volume 1, 2, and 3, in this short time. The requirements are many, and it's a very good regulation. It's very detailed. It's very systematic, and so on. So the reason why I'm saying this is because such a short time is not enough to discuss this regulation in detail. We need a lot of time really to understand the context, the details, the technical details, the technical requirements. And I think if we schedule one session for one section of the regulation, that would probably be good. So the reason why we're having this presentation and this discussion is really to get a broad overview, just a broad overview of what the regulation actually is and how we need to engage with it, and how the regulation has evolved from 2015 to 2025. Before that, there have been, I think, three more revisions before 2015. 2025 is actually the 5th revision of the regulation itself. And the regulation is what has been stated in the regulation itself. It is based on really the best regulations on different parts of the world, United Nations, WHO, World Health Organization, and so on. So it draws upon a lot of good regulations and standards. But having said that, it's not, sometimes it becomes a little stringent, but it is required for a place like an industrial area. MashaAllah, Jubail Industrial City is one of the largest industrial cities in the world. And alhamdulillah, we see that the environmental control protection is of very high standards. I'll give you one small example. We see that the sparrows and birds, they live inside the industries. Sparrows, the small ones, osfur, which is called in Arabic. These sparrows are very small sparrows, and they're very sensitive to pollution. So any increase in the contaminants can immediately kill the birds. But we see that these sparrows, they live inside the industries, so that means the contaminant level is very, very low. In many cities in the world, especially the developing countries, we see that sparrows have disappeared from the cities. We don't find them in the cities anymore. They have been wiped out. But if you go to places like the villages away from the main cities, then where there's no pollution, that's where we see the sparrows and other birds. But mashallah, in Jubail, in Yambu', in many places, we see that these birds are living inside the industries. So that's a good sign, actually. And it's a good sign, and actually it's also a good evidence to, to refute the misconceptions of many people saying that, it's polluted and things like that. But the Royal Commission Environmental Protection and Control Department, RCEPCD, they have been doing a fantastic job of controlling and monitoring the areas. There may be at times, I worked in SABIC for 16 years, so we had many occasions when we had to fight with the Royal Commission on many things, but at the end of the day, we are friends, and we are having this discussions which are healthy, to help us, to help the industry and also the regulator both to do their job and to make things easy for everyone and come on common grounds. I could give you many examples. So that is basically the context of the regulation. The regulation, the environmental regulation, like I said, is divided into three parts: Volume 1, 2, and 3. Volume 1 are the regulations and standards, which is required for every facility to follow in terms of their daily activities. Volume 2 is the permit section. The permit section, which is about obtaining the environmental permits. So what are the environmental permits? We will take them when we go to the slide on section 2. And section 3 is the violation system. Facilities violate, and the Royal Commission has a system to address those violations, and they impose penalties if the violation is of serious nature. So these are the three main volumes that we have in the Royal Commission Environment Regulations. Volume 1 itself is divided into 8 sections, and now it's 9 sections. So each section has to deal with a specific subject. So you have section 1, which is general. It's about what are the duties of the regulator, the duties of the facilities, briefly what are the permits and what is required from every facility in terms of compliance to the regulation. Section 2 is air, the most important one. It deals with ambient air, continuous emissions, stack testing, fugitive emissions, and so on. Section 3 is water. So we have different kinds of water that is used. We have, first of all, is the ambient water quality, which is basically the sea, the Arabian Gulf, which is neighboring the Arabian Gulf on the eastern coast and the Red Sea on the west coast. So the regulations address the ambient water quality of these water bodies. And we also have regulations related to sanitary waste, industrial effluents, seawater, variant streams, groundwater, and so on. And section 4 is about hazardous materials management, hazmat. And section 5 is waste management. Section 6 is ground. It's a new section now. It's called soil. And then you have section 7, which is about noise, and section 8, which is for the reporting requirements. So this, in brief, is the volume 1. Volume 2, like I said, it is of the permitting system, and permitting system, it has it has 2 parts. We'll go into details when we go next. And then for volume 3 is the penalties and the violations. So that's in brief about the regulation itself. And there are standards. Volume 1 deals with standards. What are the ambient air quality limits, the limits for continuous emissions, for stack testing, similarly for fugitives, and also in section 3 we have the standards for the effluents and so on. So with this very brief introduction, I will like to start the presentation. So the main purpose of this is to look at what was the 2015 regulation and what are the new regulations in terms of what additions have been made in the new regulation 2025. So 2015 was the previous revision, and there was a gap of 10 years. Usually the regulations are revised every 5 years, but this time it was done after 10 years because there was alignment that was required between the Royal Commission. Yes, Adnan, I know I've still not started the presentation, so I'm just giving you the background, the introduction. The regulation was revised after 10 years because there was alignment that was required between the Royal Commission and also the Ministry of Environment, Water Resources and Agriculture, MIWA. And you have the NCEC, which is the National Center for Environment Compliance under MEWA, and they came out with their own executive regulations, and there was alignment that was required between them. So that's why the revision was a little late in being issued. But now we have it, 2025. Last year it was issued, and now we're in 2026. And so the purpose of this is really for people who are engaged with the with the regulation on a day-to-day basis, on a periodic basis. How can they get a quick overview of what has been changed and what has been added and so on. So with this, I'm sorry, the introduction itself took a little long, but with this we can start our presentation. So this is Volume 1, which is about regulations and standards. Section 1, the regulatory system itself. We have a reference to the Royal Commission cities now. Earlier, it used to be Royal Commission for Jubail and Yanbu', but now we have the Royal Commission cities that have been added, which is basically Ras Al Khair on the east coast, 100 kilometers north of Jubail, and we have Jazan that has been added to the Royal Commission cities. So these regulations will be applicable to these four cities at the moment. The other cities are planned, Al-Ula in north, near Tabuk, that has been planned. Royal Commission has also been planned in Riyadh and Mecca and Medina. So as and when these cities are developed and commissioned, then these regulations will start getting applicable to those cities as well. What has also been noticed in the new regulation is that the regulatory language has been enforced. It has been made more stringent, and it has been more systematic in terms of timelines, what needs to be done when, the permits, the reporting, and so on. This has been made more clear. And also what has been added is there is a formal exemption procedure. Earlier it used to be just one form in the permit application package where the facility could apply for an exemption, but now this exemption procedure has been made more detailed, and this is subject to Royal Commission review, and also there is a validity that is and an action plan that is required for any facility that is seeking an exemption. EIA, it was mandatory to be done by certified agencies by the Royal Commission. Now it has been made more specific because we know that the facilities have category A, B, and C. There are three categories, and earlier one company would be doing the EIA for all the three categories, but now this has been modified slightly so that companies can apply for category B or category C and category A. So not necessarily that there's only one company with a general permit from Royal Commission, and they will do the EIA for all the three different categories. So this distinction has been brought into the new regulation. In terms of Section 2, when we move to the air environment, we see that there is no major change in the ambient air quality standards and the continuous emission standards. But for the continuous emissions, one requirement has been added, which is that the associated SEMs need to be also included. An example is oxygen. So we see that facilities, they have oxygen analyzers, but they never used to be tested. It never used to be reported. But oxygen is a useful parameter, to calculate from ppm or microgram per meter cube to nanogram per joule. It's a significant parameter in this calculation. So now the performance test of these associated SEMs has also been included. The other thing is for the stack testing, it used to be maximum intended use. So if you have a boiler and the boiler is running at 60% of its design capacity or its load, then it used to be allowed. But now there is a little more of focus on this equipment, especially those equipments that have emission stacks, emission point sources. So these will have to be run at maximum design capacity, and this has to be reviewed by the RC EPCD. So if, for example, if a facility is not able to run the boiler at its maximum design capacity, which is 100%, ideally it's 100%. So 100% is not possible, but it can be run only on, say, 85%, then the facility is required to go back to the RC and tell them that, we have these limitations, we have operational limitations, we have safety concerns, and are not able to run this equipment on this capacity, and so they request them to do it on what can be practical. So this requirement has been more made explicit in the regulation. Also, there is RATA and SATA was already there in the previous regulation, but it has become mandatory now. So RATA, most of you may know, it's the relative accuracy test audit. So that is something that was introduced in the 2015 regulation, but now it has been made mandatory that it has to be as part of the test, the stack testing plan. And earlier, what was mentioned in Section 8 of the regulation is that the facility was testing the testing, the annual stack test, which is, you all know, it's done by third party, RC approved third party. So the facility would submit a plan to the RC saying that this is our plan on doing these tests on certain dates, and they request RC to witness it. But now this has been made more formalized, which is that the acknowledgement from the RC is required for the annual test campaign, and so that the witness by the RC has been confirmed. Apart from this, there's really not much that has been added in terms of the testing itself for continuous emissions and for the annual stack testing. For 2.7, which is combustion of hazardous materials, some of the facilities they have equipment where they burn some of the hazardous materials that are generated on the site. So it could be heavies or it could be lights, and these go to the combustion chamber of the equipments like boilers or incinerators. So there is something new that has been added here, which is that if these material are being sent to combustion equipment, and the combustion equipment also has a feed of the fuel, then this needs to be explicitly mentioned in the environmental permit complaint. And what is that if the hazmat is being sent to a certain equipment, that line should basically have an automatic cutoff system, so that if the equipment is not running, it shuts down, then the hazmat is not going to the equipment. So that should be automatically cut off from the system. And of course, I mean, hazmat that is combusted, the records are kept, but now it's been made more formal. Fugitive emissions, nothing has changed. It remains the same, which is for the volatile organic compounds and the hazardous air pollutants. VOCs, the limit is 10,000 ppm on each regulated component, and for the HAP, the hazardous air pollutant, it's basically 100 ppm. So that remains the same. So this is where we also come to the part where we would like this to be made more it should be addressed. These limits need to be addressed because 10,000 ppm for a VOC and 500 ppm for a I said 100 is actually 500. 500 ppm for hazardous gluten at the source is actually very high because when, for example, if you have benzene, the limit is 9 ppb, parts per billion on the fence. And if you have a leak of, say, 100 ppm of benzene or at the source, then this will definitely be leading to a high concentration on the fence. So this is something that needs to be taken care of. And many countries are now moving from the traditional, fugitive emissions TV analyzer that is used to infrared monitoring. Infrared doesn't give you the quantity, but at least it gives you a very good fingerprint on the gases that are leaking from the process components. But in terms of regulation, nothing has been changed for fugitive emissions. We move to section 3, which is the water environment. Again, the main sections related to ambient water quality, effluents, sanitary wastewater, seawater, not much has been changed. It's basically the same. But for the groundwater, it has been made mandatory for the facilities to monitor the baseline. So we know that any facility that begins construction, before the construction, they do a baseline study, which is part of the EIA, the Environmental Impact Assessment. So there are wells that are installed at this phase, and these are called the baseline wells. And these baseline wells depends on the facility. These are installed before the construction begins, and these are supposed to be preserved. Now, earlier, what used to be done was once the baseline is completed, the facility had an option to close the wells and install the wells based on the EPO requirement or the RCER requirement. But now the new requirement is that the baseline wells that are installed by a facility before construction, they need to be preserved, and these need to be monitored along with the other wells that will be installed before the facility is commissioned and which are mentioned in the environmental permit to operate of that facility. Apart from that, the other things related to the effluent, seawater, cooling water, all this remains the same. Nothing much has been changed. Some modifications around the drinking water quality. Just one thing is, instead of using chlorine or hypochlorite, now it's been mandatory to use chlorine dioxide instead of the chlorine and the hypochlorite. So this is for section 3. Section 4, not much. It's more or less the same. So hazmat materials management, this is the regulation is quite comprehensive. What is required by the facility? The first thing to do is to maintain the hazmat inventory, which is updated on an annual basis and which is submitted to the Royal Commission on the first month of the following year. So if we are in 2026 now, so every facility needs to submit the hazmat inventory to the RC in Jan of the following year, which is now 2027. The other requirements are the equipment that stores hazmats, especially volatiles, and we know that most of the industries in Saudi Arabia, which come under the Royal Commission jurisdiction, they have a lot of volatiles, and most of these are liquids, and most of these are quite volatile because these are all petroleum and petroleum-related materials. So petroleum, it's volatile, and the temperature is quite high, especially during the summer, and these leads to a lot of emissions through the tank vents and the PSVs and so on. So the inspection of these is required so that the leaks do not happen. And something that facilities tend to forget is this: the inspection of the seals, the tanks, for example, they have two seals, the primary seal and the secondary seal, and they have internal floating roofs. to manage the vapors. So the secondary seal needs to be inspected on an annual basis, and this needs to be witnessed by RC as well. And that's something that facilities don't do. They don't they are required, just like the stack testing, they are required to inform the RC about the plan to inspect the secondary seals of the tanks with internal floating roof, and RC needs to come and witness the inspection of that. But that's something that has been missed by many facilities. So these are what is required, and basically you have more requirements on labeling uh, and so on. Also, what has been added is there is a requirement to enhance the emergency response plan, and the responsibilities and the documentation requirements by the transporters has been enhanced. We move on to section 5, which is waste, and section 6, which is soil quality, which is a new section that has been added. For waste, basically it remains the same, but it's more focusing now on the responsibilities of the transporter, and also the documentation requirements for the transportation of wastes within Jubail or within the Royal Commission cities, because the regulation is very clear. The waste that is generated inside a Royal Commission city, Jubail, Yanbu', Ras Al Khair, Jazan, that has to be dealt with within the city itself. And if you need to send it out for some reason, then explicit permission of the Royal Commission is required. Section 6, soil, is a new addition. And here, facilities really need to be very careful. It's a big heads up. This is coming also from the NCEC executive regulations. Earlier, soil was not monitored within the Royal Commission cities, but now it has been added. Just like you have the groundwater requirements, now we have the soil quality requirements. And the focus on soil is expected to become more, because the groundwater in is more easy to catch. And the every facility does the annual monitoring, and any contamination can be detected very easily. But soil, sometimes the general premise is that any contamination in the soil reaches the groundwater, but sometimes maybe there may be an impervious layer between the soil and the groundwater aquifer, and the contamination may not reach the groundwater. This is good, but the soil becomes contaminated. So in such a case, detecting the contamination of the soil and remediation becomes important for the facility. So there are new regulations on soil, and this is, like I said, a new section that has been added, and it is quite important now for facilities to start addressing their soil quality, not wait for the regulator to come, take a sample. By the way, even the NCC can come and take a sample from the facilities now. So you don't wait for the regulators to come, take a sample, put a violation and so on. So it's a good thing to start addressing, if you have soil contamination on your sites, to start addressing these issues at an early stage, so that the problem can be contained and not allowed to spread. On section 7, which is dredging, really this is applicable only to the ports and not to the facilities, not to the operation plants. But this will be applicable to the facilities like Subtank if they're doing dredging. So it's again, nothing has been removed, nothing has been added. This made it more specific on some requirements. Section 8, which is about reporting, we don't have much on that. It's mostly the same. So the reports that each facility has been submitting as part of the RCER or as per the EPO, then that continues, and it's basically the same. So I'm sorry, Section 8 is not reporting. Section 8 is noise monitoring. So noise monitoring is basically the same. So there's no change. That's Section 9. Section 8 used to be reporting, but because they added soil, now this has become Section 9. So for reporting, the reporting requirements remain the same, but what has been added is like this. So on the previous slides, soil quality. The soil quality needs to be now be reported, and the quantity of hazmats that are combusted on the site, these also need to be reported now. But what we see is there is a more focus on the quality of the reports itself. So there is a requirement to have a QA/QC, the quality assurance and quality control done of all the reports. And this is something that the facilities definitely need to start working on. So earlier it used to be they take the reports from, they take the data from the audits, they put in the format and they submit the report to the Royal Commission. Now this is not acceptable. So now we are looking at a focus on the quality of this report. So basically, when we talk about quality assurance and quality control, QA/QC of the reports, then it's about data validation. The data needs to be validated. The data needs to be assured that it's accurate, it's reliable, and then that data is used to prepare the reports, and the reports need to be, for example, it's just not the environmental engineer or the environmental specialist who's preparing the reports, but he prepares it definitely, yes, but it goes to someone within the organization who can maybe a cold eye review, or the third person within the organization uh, who addresses any concerns about the report. Then it is authorized, and then it is approved and then submitted to the Royal Commission. So these are some of the new requirements that are there with regards to reporting. So before we move on to volume 2, I see that some people are raising their hands. Maybe we can take some questions around volume 1 before we move on to volume 2. You can please put your questions in the QA section. The Royal Commission website section for its regulations does not list or host the new RCER volumes 1 and 2. Volume 1 and 2 and 3 are available. So you can get in touch with us and we can definitely share a copy with you. The presentation, yes, the presentation will be shared. Absolutely. Yeah. Any questions on um, one? Abdul Samir, I believe you have a question. Within the RC, the QA/QC, no, the QA/QC needs to be done on the site. Your facility needs to do it. Definitely, the Royal Commission, they are reviewing your reports, and they review the reports very carefully in detail. So that's why you get a lot of comments on the reports. But the QA/QC team, or the persons who are assuring the quality of data, the quality of reporting, and who are approving the release of the report from the facility to the Royal Commission, that needs to be on your side. Okay. Mohammed Naweed. Okay, good questions. I think, is there a revision timeline for EIA construction permitting? Then is the scoping report mandatory for all EIAs? We'll come to that when we go to the volume 2 for the permitting. Soil is surface sampling. Yes, depends. Depends on the level of contamination. Requirements for continuous opacity requirements. Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Opacity. Opacity is opacity measurement is related to particulate matter. So the requirement is okay. The Royal Commission can ask a facility to install opacity requirements. Okay, if it feels that there is a possibility that particulate matter can be generated from that particular equipment. And this happens especially with boilers, burning crude oil boilers, or if you're burning hazardous materials, heavies, for example, that are generated on site, and you send it to the boiler as a supplementary fuel. So in such cases, when there is a possibility of per PM to be generated, that's when the opacity requirements come. If it's not there, if the facility is not burning heavies, it's not burning crude, then it may be exempted. So opacity is not a mandatory requirement. It goes back to the design. It goes back to the control systems. I mean, the air quality control systems that are there on the equipment, the technology, and other things. So that's when a decision is taken by the RC whether you need opacity or not. So once it is confirmed that you need opacity, then opacity requirements are mentioned in the standards. So it should not be, if I'm not mistaken, it should be 20%. It should, yeah, 20% is the opacity standard for the PM. So basically, it's about PM. Okay. Flaring as an example. Flaring, opacity for flaring is um, flaring is, the requirement is different. For any flare, there should be no visible emissions. That's what it says. I mean, you cannot. It's difficult, to install an opacity measuring device on a flare. So what regulation says is that there should be no visible emissions from any flare. However, uh, visible emissions are allowed for a maximum of 5 minutes in every 2-hour cycle. So that's why there can be visible emission. I mean, it's process design. So if the flare is active, flare is a safety device, right? So it gets activated when there's an upset in the plant or there's an emergency. So a huge amount of material is dumped to the flare. So what happens is, in such a situation, when the load is suddenly increased, then there is possibility of visible emissions because of incomplete combustion. So it's okay. You can do it for 5 minutes, and also to uh, not to exceed 5 minutes every 2-hour cycle. So that's the requirement for flaring. You plan the data submission through some systems or through manual submission. I think at the moment it's manual submission, but there are plans to make it online submission. There is, if you look at even 2015 regulation, the RC has been saying that the continuous emissions data and the effluent data, which is measured on a continuous basis through analyzers like pH and TDS and so on. So these need to be integrated with the RC data system. There have been a lot of challenges, especially cybersecurity and technology and so on. So the provision is there, but still, I think it's not been. It's you can go back to your EPO and can see when the RC says that until you have this in place, the online submission, then you continue submitting your reports manually by email. Okay. It seems Appendix C that traffic count survey is mandatory. Is that accurate? I need to confirm that. The soil requirement will be applicable for new sites only for new sites only, or including existing sites. The soil requirement is for all sites, irrespective of new sites, old sites. It's mostly for the old sites because we have the contamination. New sites may have, you know, less or no contamination. Okay, you mentioned that NCEC can also take soil sample when you were talking. Right. Yes, the Royal Commission has jurisdiction over the Royal Commission cities, but MEWA NCEC supersedes RC, and uh, it's mentioned in their regulations that they can also make visits and they can also take samples. Okay, so I think we have done with most of the questions here. If opacity can exceed 6 minutes, it's 5 minutes for 120. It's for flares, right? 5 minutes for every 120-minute period. You're exempt from any routine flaring or see, flaring is not routine. Flaring is something that is non-routine. It is that's the basic premise. I mean, you have the flare is activated, like I said, in emergency or abnormal situations. Having said that, we also know that there are some, for example, some process events that are connected to a flare, but these are mostly vapors. And vapors, when they're combusted in the flare, we know that they don't lead to any visible emissions. So visible emissions are only when you know a lot of gases and a lot of uh, it depends on the process. So that's why you have the visible emissions. Opacity is not mentioned with regards to flare. For the flares, it's visible emissions. So that's why you say, well, the RC says that it should be not exceed 5 minutes for every 2-hour cycle. Absolutely. So there is a discussion going on about the permits, both NCC and RC. That's something that they have to resolve. At the moment, it's for RC cities, it's the EPO, which is issued by the Royal Commission. But some of the other facilities, they have been asked to obtain both. For example, the companies that are doing the EIA, those who are authorized to do the EIA within the RC cities, they have to get the permission or the permit from NCC first, and then they get the permit from RC EPC. So that's also happening. It's not applicable to Jubail al-Balad because Jubail al-Balad is outside the Royal Commission jurisdiction. The NCEC executive regulations will be applicable for Jubail al-Balad. SWCC, Al-Barri, these facilities will come under NCEC, not under Royal Commission. When will the revised limits on the emission and effluent discharge become mandatory if you have a valid EPO? If you have a valid EPO, then it becomes immediately mandatory because the EPO is a permit to operate, right? So when you're operating, then the limits will be applicable. However, the RC can also do something. They can also give you limits other than the limits that are mentioned in the regulation, and these limits can be much less. So usually we have seen this. If the Royal Commission feels that you can meet the standards, they tell you to follow the standards that are mentioned in the regulation. But if your design is good, your technology is good, and you can go below the RC limits, then RC is going to give you those limits. It happened in one of the facilities in Sabic. The limit for NOx, 63 nanogram per joule if it is gas fired, the facility was given 8.6 nanogram per joule. So you have a big difference, 63 to 8.6. So that's possible. Okay, so I think there's some more questions on QA. Regulations regarding climate impact, at the moment, no. Climate impact is, it's not included in the regulation, but that's something that facilities are engaging with on a voluntary basis. See, because first of all, Saudi Arabia is not from those countries that have mandatory limits to reduce carbon emissions. So the mandatory requirements is only for the developed countries, USA, Europe, Japan, those countries. So they have, it's mandatory upon them to reduce their carbon emissions. For countries like Saudi Arabia, GCC and other countries, it's not mandatory, but it's voluntary. So that's why this has to not come in the regulation. So climate issues, climate impact, climate resilience, carbon reduction, carbon footprinting, these are at the moment voluntary initiatives that companies are taking. So it's part of their sustainability journeys, it's part of their ESG reporting, but it's not mandatory. That's why we don't see that in the regulation. But your point is good. If you read the regulation closely, I mean the new one, the 2025, they have started making references to these issues: climate, carbon, life cycle assessments, sustainability, all these. Will soil requirement be applicable for new sites only, or like I said, it's for both sites? Are there any authority in RC? No. Okay. Okay. I think we have done with all these questions. Okay, so now let's move on to the volume 2. Volume 2 is about the permit system, right? So permit systems in RC, they have a very good process. It starts with once the facility is given the go ahead, they acquire the land within the Royal Commission area that is done by the investments department. Once they get the land, then what they do is they submit an ESQ, which is called the Environmental Screening Questionnaire. So the screening questionnaire, it will basically list out all the significant environmental issues or aspects. So once the ESQ is prepared, the ESQ is sent to the Royal Commission. So the Royal Commission reviews the ESQ. Of course, you have to give them some basic information about the process, descriptions, and if there are any air emission sources, effluents. I mean, basic information which is basically extracted from the design package. So once the ESQ is verified, then RC will ask that facility to do the EIA, the environmental impact assessment. The environmental impact assessment is also now related to the category of the facility, though. So the major, if the facility is going to have a big impact, then that's called category A, B, and C. So based on the category, the type of EIA is also done. So once the EIA is done, the environmental impact assessment is done, and I'm sure you have knowledge of what an environmental impact assessment is. Once the EIA is done, then the EIA is submitted to the RC, and once the EIA is approved, then the facility starts working on the permits. So the first permit that is required is the EPC, which is the environmental permit to construct, and this is submitted to the RC immediately after the EIA is approved. And the EPC, which the facility uses the same forms, which are given in volume 2. These are called the permit application forms. I think now there are 29 to 30 forms now. So once these forms, the applicable forms are submitted to the RC, which is called the permit application package, and those are reviewed. If the RC has comments, they get back to you with their comments, and if they're satisfied with the EPC, then the facility is given the EPC, the environmental permit to construct. And once the EPC is issued, that's when the company starts the process of construction. So the EPC process can be minimum 6 months. It has to be 6 months before the start of the construction, or it can be more than 6 months. It depends on the facility when they are ready and when they can apply, get the permit, and start construction. But the 6 months window is something that is mentioned in the regulation itself. So if you submit the permit application package for the EPC, you cannot expect that you can start construction within 1 month. So you need to really plan it out. You need to work it out well with the regulatory requirements and also the RC, so that you get the EPC at least. You submit the permit application package at least 6 months before the construction start date, and then you inform the RC about the construction start date, and then you can follow up to get the EPC issued. So once the EPC is issued, the facility starts the construction process. And when the construction process is due for mechanical completion, so again the same thing applies. So you need to submit the permit application package 6 months before the commissioning date, at least, if not more. So you submit the permit application package for the environmental permit to operate. And when the construction is reaching mechanical completion, 60 days, that's 2 months before the mechanical completion date, you need to inform the RC about this date, about the mechanical completion. So these are the requirements so that you can get the EPO, the environmental permit to operate in time. So in brief, this is how the process works. So the permit application package forms are very much in detail. There are a lot of requirements. It depends on the facility, it depends on the complexity of the process, it depends on the technology. It's a big task. So that's why most of the companies, what they do is they outsource it to professional consultants who have experience in developing these forms, because the form itself, if you look at each form, it is very systematic. They go from A, B, C, D, E to the end, and for each section of the form, you need to submit the supporting documents in terms of process descriptions, material balance, calculations, PFDs, diagrams, PNIDs, vendor guarantees, data sheets, a lot of requirements that go in to populate those forms. The bigger the facility, the more the form requirements, the bigger the package becomes. But this is something that has to be done by every facility. I mean, I'm sure most of you who are working in Royal Commission cities know about this. And then the EPO is issued, and then the EPO is renewed every 5 years. So every 5 years, by the way, when the first EPO, the permit application package for the EPO is submitted, the drawings, the attachments that are submitted should be as-built drawings issued for construction and as-built. So the IFC requirements are for the EPC, and for the EPO, these should be as-built diagrams. So the EPO is issued. The EPO will have it has a main certificate, which is the Royal Commission has approved this facility to operate, and the conditions are mentioned as an attachment. So the facility, what it produces, what is the production capacity, what are the products, everything is mentioned. And also section-wise conditions are given for air, for water, for hazmat, for groundwater, for everything. And you have, so the basic thing is that the EPO refers to the regulation, like I said, but if there are some additional requirements, then that will be specifically mentioned in the EPO. It could be limits, it could be stack limits, it could be effluents, it could be groundwater, what parameters need to be monitored. what standards have to be followed. All these are mentioned in the EPO. So what has come in 2025 is it's mostly the same, not much of a change, but there is a little more focus on the baseline data, the other national regulations like NCEC, executive regulations, and on uh, issues like sustainability, climate, and so on. The question that the gentleman asked. So if you look at this, this part of the regulation, volume 2, this is where we see that some of these aspects have been mentioned, but it's not still not mandatory. It is only an indication. um, for the for the framework itself, the framework not only looking at the laws, regulations, and standards and limits and so on, but is also focusing on the management of these aspects. For the baseline, uh, there is an emphasis on retaining the baseline parameters, like we discussed about the groundwater. So whatever baseline data is generated, that same data needs to be monitored during the operation phase as well. So that is a big, it's a big shift from just doing the baseline analysis and keeping the data aside, but that becomes the baseline data becomes an active reference point for all the facilities. And this is something the facilities need to be very careful when they're doing the baseline studies itself. You need to align the baseline parameters, everything with the current regulation. I'll give you one example. Let's take the example of benzene. Benzene is 9 ppb, right? 9 parts per billion in the regulation now. But when you look at the baseline studies, nobody is focusing on benzene. The EIA, which is done on NOx and SO2 and CO and CO2, PM 2.5, 5, and 10, and that's it. So VOCs generally and specifically hazardous air pollutants like benzene or whatever, these are not taken into consideration during the baseline phase, the EIA phase. So if by design this facility is going to have these chemicals, and these may be released to the atmosphere, and these may be present during the operation phase, then it's a good idea to catch up them now, capture them in the study phase, make it as part of the baseline. And if you have, say, 4 ppb of benzene already in the air, you get a buffer of 4 ppb. So instead of saying 9 ppb, because 4 ppb is already available, RC can give you 13 ppb. So that's possible. So that's something that needs to be carefully dealt with during the baseline studies itself. For the biological environment, there's really not much focus on biodiversity, because these industrial areas are old areas. They've been established over a long time, but now there are inclusions with regards to ecosystem services and biological receptors, which may be away from the main industrial areas. Impact assessment, it's basically the same, but also now it includes um, issues like transition risks and operational risks. It's more holistic and it's more forward-looking. And for the significance evaluation, by significance we mean the significance of the environmental aspects, then this has been made multi-criteria. It does not just include likelihood and severity, but includes stakeholder sensitivity and also issues like reversibility. So those have been included. And mitigation, mitigation is now there's more focus on the hierarchy of mitigation, hierarchy of controls, which is avoid, eliminate or avoid, minimize control, which is engineering controls and so on. So that is more evident in the new regulation. Monitoring and reporting, the management aspect has been included, and for risk, it's the risk framework has been introduced. For stakeholder consultations, it has been more made more comprehensive to include the risks and priorities related to the stakeholders. What has been enhanced in terms of guidelines is we have a new guideline, Appendix K, which is there are new forms that have been introduced for these ones: stack testing and cooling tower drift loss testing, conducting EIAs, fugitive emissions testing, and environmental laboratories. And you also have the new appendices LMNO, which is L is guidelines for environmental site assessment and remediation. M is dust mitigation plan. N is stack test and data test planning. And O is environmental management plan. So we also have an enhanced glossary. The glossary for all the 3 volumes, 1, 2, and 3, has been enhanced. So there are more terms that have been introduced with their definitions. And for the new form, R1 for the EPO renewal. And this brings us to the end of volume 2. Volume 2 is more from just compliance to moving from compliance only to more strategic preparedness, so that the companies they understand the regulations well, they plan ahead and are looking at being compliant to the regulations from an early stage, and not something to be done after the incident has happened. So if we summarize, we look at volume 2. It's volume 2 in 2015 was more baseline compliance oriented, but now volume 2 is more is linked to addressing risks, identifying the risks, and managing those risks, and also it is more forward-looking and management-focused. So this is about volume 2. Do you have any questions on volume 2? If there's a last minute change in the design, please explain the process to rectify the EPO. If you have the EPO with you already and you want to modify the EPO, then you can do this anytime you want. You don't have to wait for the 5-year cycle. And this is, you don't even have to fill up all the forms again. So say for example, if you have a modification on the effluent treatment plant, so you go to PAW5 or PAW2, whichever form is applicable. So you fill that form that is applicable to that particular system and to that particular equipment, and you also fill up the other forms, the general PAG1, the utilities related form, things like that. And if this is affecting another facility, then you also need to look at which part of that facility is being affected. So for example, if your effluent is changing, you have a facility and your effluent is changing, and your effluent goes to your utilities department, and so therefore there is going to be an impact on the utilities department as well. So you look at what forms are affected, and you fill up those forms, you update the information, and you give them a summary saying that this is what has happened. So what is usually done is you prepare a technical report. So a technical report will be, it describes the whole modification in brief. It's a summary. You put some PFDs and you put some basic diagrams. You prepare a technical report and you say that this is the change that's going to happen, and because of these are the EPO conditions that will be affected. So for these EPO conditions, you have the PF forms, the permit application package forms. So you send that as a package and request them to modify the EPO, and this can be done at any time. You don't have to wait for the 5-year cycle. Okay. All right. In Appendix C, tangentially, I'm sorry, I didn't get the point. If you could elaborate. Okay. All right. So we can move on to the last part of this presentation, which is volume 3. Volume 3 is about the environmental violations. If you know 2015, let me summarize this. 2015, the fines. Okay, the violation were divided into 4 categories: A, B, C, and D. Category A, B, C, and D, and then you had the fixed and the variable fines for those categories. Now these have been enhanced and they have been made into 5 categories. It has also, catastrophic category has also been introduced. The calculation basically remains the same, but there is a more detailed calculation on the impact of the violation. And if you remember, RCER 2015 had a maximum cap of 500,000 riyals on each violation. But now they have removed this 500,000 and now they make a reference to the NCEC regulation. So the penalty in the violation system that is there as part of the NCEC executive regulations, so that will be followed now. And that is not as merciful as RCER. RCER 500,000 per violation was something which was quite affordable by companies. But now, if you look at the NCEC executive regulations, penalties can go into millions, depending on the intensity of the violation and the category of the violation and so on. So that is something that needs to be taken care of. That should be noted by all the facilities in the Royal Commission cities. It's not 500,000, 250,000 for a medium violation and so on. Now the violations are, I mean, the penalties, the money part has been enhanced greatly. It refers to the NCEC executive regulations. The glossary has been enhanced, and like I said, there are 6 violation classes now, from 4 to 6, and this have been made more descriptive in the violation system itself. And for each section and each clause of each section, there is a violation. I mean, if there is a violation of that clause, there is a calculation for that, depending on the impact of the violation. I think, in brief, this is what is the main modification in volume 3. So in terms of calculation of the violation itself, earlier it used to be a formula. Now the same formula has been retained, but only the classes have been increased. There is also an appeal committee that has been established, which is called the Environmental Penalty Appeal Committee, EPAC. This is a new committee. Earlier, it used to be you apply to the CEO or to the industry's investment department, to the CEO, and then the CEO office would form an appeal committee, and the appeal committee would be from different stakeholders, and they would look at the appeal. But now there is a formal committee that has been formed, which is the EPAC. So if you basically how this works is that if you get a violation, okay, the violation are different types, right? There is a warning letter. A warning letter is for for a violation that has happened, but it has not resulted in a major impact. But if a facility does not take care of it, then the violation, the intensity, the impact of that violation may get aggravated. So you need to start taking actions immediately. So that's a warning letter. And then there is an urgent notice of non-compliance. The urgent notice of non-compliance is a serious issue. So the facility that receives the urgent notice of non-compliance has to take action immediately. The first action is to respond to the Royal Commission within 24 hours on this non-compliance notice. If the facility does not respond within 24 hours, then matters start getting serious. So once the urgent notice of non-compliance is issued and the company responds to the Royal Commission will decide whether to proceed further with the non-compliance or to close it. If the RC is convinced about the corrective action that has been taken and the preventive action that will be put in place, then they can give you a notice of non-compliance or a violation notice without a penalty. But if the corrective action and the preventive action is not does not satisfy the requirements of RCER and RCPCD, then that's when the penalty is imposed. So when you get a notice of violation or you get a notice of violation with a penalty, that's when this for big corporates like Sabic and Satorp and Sadara and Tasneer, they consider this as it's an incident. So you need to put the incident investigation process formally in place. But in terms of the response to the RC, what is done is within 7 days of receiving this notice of violation, the company has to within 10 days of receiving the notice of the violation notice, you have to submit your corrective action. And then what actions the facility has taken to minimize the impact of this environmental violation. Within 20 days, you submit the corrective action plan and the preventive action plan. What actions will the company put in place to prevent the recurrence of this particular incident? And within 30 days, you can submit an appeal. Once you submit the corrective action plan and the preventive action plan, and within 30 days, you can submit an appeal for the violation. And this appeal earlier would be sent to the CEO, but now it goes to the EPAC, the Environmental Penalty Appeal Committee. So this is something that has been included in volume 3. The new fees for EPC, EPO, it is the fees are scaled by the facilities, the category of the facility. There are fees for waste transport permits, fees for EIS studies and so on, and also fees for data requests. And you can request data, ambient air quality data, for example, you can request from RC. You can also request other kinds of data, and this comes for a fee. And the detailed penalty calculators, these have been removed, and now these have been replaced with the penalty ranges per clause, like I was mentioning. So, and finally, the legal and procedural updates. There's a lot of reference to MIWA, Ministry of Environment, Water Resources and Agriculture, NCEC, and MOAN. And for repeated violations, the violations will be handed over to competent authorities. And there are updates related to electronic and national address so that the notice can be delivered more effectively, and so on. And like I said, the facilities have been expanded, first, second, and third category. So earlier, the 2015 regulation was more technical, formula driven, with emphasis on calculation, transparency, of course. But now it's more simplified. It's more range based. It's not one standard formula for each violation. And now it's more streamlined and better administered. So there is a significant shift in volume 3 because of the NCEC executive regulations coming into place. and therefore the whole penalty system has been kind of reworked to be aligned with the NCEC violation regulations. So I think with this we have come to the close of the presentation. Before we conclude, we would just again we thank you all for your participation this afternoon. You have taken time out from your busy schedules to be part of this session. We really hope you have enjoyed this and you have benefited from the session. And we would really like to keep this communication going. At any time you would like to have any clarifications, you could reach out to us on our website or mobiles or LinkedIn, wherever you want. Emails, you could email us anytime you want. And we would be more than happy to address your concerns. So GEOTEK is a company that is based in Jubail in Saudi Arabia. And we have a lot of services we offer. Uh, it's a company that is addressing technology, engineering, and knowledge. So this session was part of our efforts in the knowledge realm, and we have done. The company has been active in these fields since the past 5 years, and we our service on providing solutions for different environmental related issues. The first one is definitely it's air. We have state of the art US EPA approved and Japanese and European equipment covering a lot of areas, especially air monitoring, ambient air quality monitoring, uh, instrumentations related to that, and so on, fence line monitoring. So these are our specializations. I think I would leave this to Adnan, the director of the company, to continue this part, introducing the company. Adnan?
Thank you so much, Nikhil sir, and thank you everyone to participating in this webinar. And the webinar is no doubt very good and very informative, and especially we discuss about the new regulation. And this regulations, as everyone knows, after the 10 years, almost 1 decade, this imposed, and there are a lot of things, and we need to discuss. And after, for example, this meeting or this webinar, anyone can directly contact to us. We will send the video links also to all participants, and sharing the reply. For example, what is your questions? We will try to give you reply as this complete webinar is recorded. And regarding the company, as Mr. Liaka told, we are providing technology, engineering, and knowledge solution, especially for the environmental pollution monitoring. These are our worldwide partner. We bring the different innovative technology, cost-effective solution to comply to the Royal Commission's requirement for the air pollution monitoring, for the air continuous emissions monitoring, LDAR or fugitive emissions monitoring, noise monitoring, water and industrial wastewater monitoring and treatment. So these are our different technology partners, and we are providing the solution through their support. Sir, if you can move the slide, so we can give the further details. So this atmospheric science and climate change study is this is our services. We are providing the research and development services also for the climate change and atmospheric studies. We have US EPA approved analyzers to measure the NOx, SOx, and particulate matter, PM10, PM2.5, CO, and volatile organic compounds like benzene, toluene, BTX. These parameters we can measure fence line monitoring. Furthermore, we can also provide the odor assessments, greenhouse gases emissions monitoring, and back trajectory analysis. For example, if there are any release, gas release, or any clients wants air dispersion modeling or these services, we can provide the services. If we can go back. This one is the licensing, which we discussed in our RCR. This also required like for the EPO preparation or EPC preparation. We will provide the complete regulatory consultancy regarding the PAP preparation or air emission inventory and risk assessment, aspects and impact assessments of environmental study, ESG reporting. This services also we are offering with our subject matter experts. Mr. Liaquat is also, yeah, yes. These are the air pollution monitoring services like fence line monitoring, ambient air quality or monitoring services, predictive emissions, continuous emission, flare monitoring. And please feel free regarding the any environmental concerns with us. I will not take too much time. I will give the chance to our participants to ask the questions regarding this presentation, regarding the further future our events. So if you have any questions, we can reply this. Liaquat, please, we can discuss the questions and after that we can conclude this meeting.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
These also services we are offering, sir, contaminated site investigation, soil and groundwater assessment, and remediation services. So these very hot topic, by the way, in the Jubel area, in the Yambo area, and mostly clients are worry about it because the new regulations are very strict, especially for the soil monitoring, soil investigation in groundwater. So if any clients wants the study or, for example, estimation, environmental side assessments, we are very glad to assist to them, sir. Furthermore, Mr. Liaquat, sir, you can answer. Thank you so much,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you, Adnan. All right. So I think we will conclude with this now. Just a small heads up on our upcoming courses. Now, we have, alhamdulillah, we have completed the session on the Royal Commission Environment Regulations 2025 comparison with 2015. We will be launching soon these courses. These are detailed courses, and these are courses that will be very helpful for people, that will give them on-hand experience and on-hand, uh, knowledge on how to address these important subjects. Some of the courses that we have planned is environmental impact assessment. We will teach you what is an EIA, how it's done, what are the main requirements, what are the outputs, and so on. Environmental risk assessment, that is something that is required by responsible care, ISO 40001, and also now many companies in the environmental management plan, and also for the companies on a day-to-day basis. So we will teach you how to do the environmental risk assessment, what are the methods that are involved, and so on. Compliance management is about looking at the regulation itself, doing a gap analysis, and having the legal registers, the compliance evaluation, reporting, EPO compliance evaluation, and so on. So this will be taught in this compliance management course. The fourth course is the air emissions monitoring techniques. This is on-site in Al Jubail. What we will provide to the participants is they will be invited to our company in Jubail, and they will be given a hands-on experience on various instruments, analyzers, everything, the whole setup on how these work, what are the principles, what is the method, how do you draw the readings, how do you extract the data, how do you do the analysis. So it will be a full day course, a full day session on site with hands-on experience on these instruments and analyzers. We will also have a course on air emissions inventory management. This requires a lot of effort in terms of identifying the sources, calculations, emission calculations, and also linking this to sustainability in ESG, GHG, greenhouse gas emissions, and so on. And finally, about waste management. So just to give you a heads up, we will be announcing these courses in LinkedIn with of course, the registration process, and these courses will have a fee for every participant. With this, we conclude, and before we conclude this session, we would again like to thank all of you for attending this session, and we hope you have benefited from it. If you have any suggestions, do reach out to us. You have any requirements, definitely contact us. The names are recorded, and we will issue the participation certificates as per the names that you have used to sign in into this session. I just see one name which is GBN and GM. So if you could just type out your names in the chat box, we will be more than
This
happy to. Yeah.
all GBN people we know, sir. I'm
Okay.
ex-GBN, so definitely I can share with them. And all are engaged with me in WhatsApp, sir. So definitely GBN and TPL also there is. So
Okay.
Texcellent Private Limited is also here, and we will reply to their questions also and share the videos, inshallah.
Okay. Excellent. So before we conclude, any final comments? Okay, I think I'm seeing some comments now. Quality of groundwater shall be
Uh,
compared to baseline. Yeah.
Actually, there is one more question, sir, which we need to, I think, address is asking by TPL team. Will soil requirements be applicable for the new sites only or including existing sites as well?
Mm.
In the questions, QA questions.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it'd be applicable to both. There's one gentleman, Mr. Ali Al Mubarak, he says the penalty calculation is not the same. The 2015 penalty system was based on predefined scale for severity, impact, and emissions discharge calculations, while 2025 is subjective, might be decided by a person or committee. Thank you. Thank you so much for that comment. Can you explain the appeals, please? What are they, Ms. Dana Zahrani? Okay. The appeal is once you get the notice of violation, once you submit the corrective action plan and the preventive action plan, you can appeal for closing the violation, and if you can also appeal for, waiving the penalty. So that appeal you can make once after 30 days from receiving the notice of violation. So this goes to the appealing committee. Now it goes to the appeal committee. So the appeal committee is going to review your case. It's like the Royal Commission is present and the facility is present. The facility representatives are present, and each one presents its case. So the Royal Commission, they present the case about the violation, what happened, and what was the impact, and the facility will talk about why it happened and what did they do and so on, and then they make a request to the committee saying that please please waive the penalty and so on. So that's in brief about what the appeals are. And okay, okay, all right. I think that's mostly that's related to the questions. Okay, all right. So if we don't have anything else, we could conclude. As a new company, we need to have a clear plan. Absolutely, you need to have a very clear plan about how you're going ahead with obtaining the permits, the doing the studies. Yeah, sure, definitely. When you need to submit the permit application package, what forms you need to use. So it's a detailed plan. Reach out to us, and we definitely can visit you or can arrange for a meeting, and we can discuss this out. Definitely. All right, so I think we can close it now. We have completed, alhamdulillah, half an hour before the.
Yes, great, sir. Alhamdulillah, all participants, they attended this webinar for the complete event, sir, for almost 1 and 40
Alhamdulillah.
minutes, 1 hour and 40 minutes.
Thank you, gentlemen, ladies
Thank
and
you,
gentlemen. If
everyone.
any ladies are present, yatikum afia, and definitely we can have another session soon. Yeah, okay, right. I don't know how RC will calculate the violation example if I violate section 2.4.1. Yeah, that it's the calculations are a little complicated. And like you said, it goes back to the RC to decide how they put the impact and how they put the violation. Again, thank you so much. Absolutely. وإياكم فجزاكم الله خيرا. Assalamu alaikum, gentlemen. and ladies,
Okay, Avinash.
and
Thank you so
have a
much,
good
sir.
day. We will close.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.